Wade Migme Tsewe Tenchen Chen Rezik Drime Gempe Wampo Jampel Yang Dupo Malu Jonze Sawedak Kanchen Kepe Tsungen Tsongkapa Losandra Pe Shapla Sowade. And a prayer for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings. Through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss! Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in a glory for fortunate disciples.
Sangye Chedang Tsoji Chonum La Chanchu Pardu Dani Kyabsunch Dagi Chushi Jebanda Dagi Roland Pins Sanjin Drupara Sho Sangye Chedang Tsoji Chonum La Chanchu Pardu Dani Kyabsunch Dagi Chushi Jebanda Dagi Roland Pins Sanjin Drupara Sho Sangye Chedang Tsojin Chonum La Chanchu Pardu Dani Kyabsun Dagi Chushe Jebanda Dagi and Roland Bench Sanjin Drupara Sho Kangi Tuzeni Zone Tawa Tamche Pambicher Tambichun Denze Kodam Tela Chanze Lo Namo Lai Kedan Lodan Zigi Tribun Dana Mi Kenan Rokunji Danun Chizam Tamjiki Dudaki Cheten To. Good morning, everyone. Shabatele.
Oh, Geshe Tsultrim.
Maybe there. You sit there.
That's better.
Yeah. Sorry, you can sit there. On the chair. Sit on that. Kerenzo Nimanga Sajirin Laya and again Tony Nyamdo Jizun Dremi Lerong Sorich. Kia Yoros. Tinza Telangoni Semtini Jesuran use.
So here, over the last 5 days or so, or during 5 days, there have been people gathered together that have been in conjunction with the Aryatara retreat. So Geshe feels from the very depths of his heart a great rejoicing about this. Azula. Excuse me.
Any Tajun Dromos Laundi Chidang Rigdawdi Yedam Rich Imbares. Tajun Drumi Chugurdi Tomadilana Yasa. Jizun Drumi Chugurdi Ani number Sanji Chulaya Teba Chechung Nis Shibi and Teba Chimbu Chu Yimbala Teba Chimbu Nansen Laya Dodangani Yunani Nak Constobi and Jadan Chugor Chagores.
So to begin with, the type of teachings that Aryatara is associated with. So from a Buddhist perspective, among the two vehicles, the greater and the lower vehicles, this context is among the greater vehicle. And among the two types of teachings that are related to the greater vehicle, or the Mahayana vehicle, is that above the Sutra and Tantra. So within these two groups of teachings, the teachings related to Aryatara are related to the teachings of Tantra. Sorry.
Teni the Zaviki Sangalaya Judish Yungurest. Tinani Namji Tai Yongralaya Benajitun Jumi Chukurti and Judishi Nani and Chavigu said Chavigulaya Manchajiki Chavigulaya and it's in Angures.
So among the teachings that are associated with Aryatara in terms of the secret mantra or the tantric vehicle. So in general, you can know that there's 4 different types of tantra. So in this particular instance, we are referring to the action or the kriya tantra. So these are the terms that are referred to in this case.
Teni the Chitangi Sanga Chu the Yamni Chiondi Chitangi Chani Wang Shuku was the Imbainaya Pena Jitun Dramigi Chu Yamsi Lambatan and it Pavachin resident David Chu Jitun Jambi Yang than David Chu Ra Kanji and Jitun Dramadin Telegulare. Cherizidi Ninjigulare, Jambi and Sherigulare. The disum than David Chu Court Nyams Lambalaya, Savi Sanga Chu in Balaya, Pixiki, never to pig on Shugoya Tindi, Meva, any Musrajiki, any Nyams Lambainaya, Choria Chetan, G. Chokotamase. Any Yamlin Chion, the Penachizun Tomato, so that Migadu Skyan, the any Susulayachi, Piggy, one so Tindi Menaya, Chilab Juk there, Tindiji, Insaris.
So in general, in terms of the teachings that are associated with the secret mantra or the tantric vehicle, one as a practitioner that wishes to engage in it would require specific initiations. But if one wishes to practice rituals associated with Aryatara or practices related to Avalokiteshvara or Chidresik, and likewise Manjushri, then it is not necessary that one must receive the respective initiation. So Aryatara is the embodiment of all the Buddha's enlightened activities. And likewise, Chidresik or Avalokiteshvara is the embodiment of all the Buddha's compassion. And Manjushri is the embodiment of all the Buddha's wisdom. So these three are something that are sort of not exclusive, but an exception to that rule. And you don't need that specific initiation in order to receive the blessings by practicing their respective rituals and making supplications to them. So even though one may not have received their respective initiation, then one is still able to receive the blessing. That's all.
딘자 베나 태보 침부그로 넘버 3집이다. 태보 침부그 아니 추쟁의 용수 조박에 아니 지준 드미 추고디 냠슬랭고레스 냠네 치고레스 아니 베나 태보 침부그다 추균 징행 나네 베나 다 퍼도진바나 아니 추균 시생이 지용거레스 추균시 아니 니마 가규 사자게룩스 추규시가 로게 아니 지준 드미 추고디 찍버 찍장 냠네 치기어레스 베나 예담 셴바인바이나 베나 산딘 지섬도다 아니 예담 땀진로 소바인바이나 아니 추균 소소기 비기다 지 가시 냠네 치 가시 마치에 딘디 용구도스 이네 지준 드라마 파바체르시 잠비양 추고 숨디 아니 추규 시갈로게 아니 냠네 치기여 찍버렌도스 간지 태버 침비그 취 냠네 칭의 용수 조박이 아니 지준드미 추고 파바체르시 지준 잠비양 추고 티숨디 예와 메비토네 냠네 그 쪼려야 지 난가도스 로난거레스.
So, for example, when speaking in terms of the Mahayana teachings, when somebody is practicing in terms of the Mahayana teachings, they are all subjugating and the great Aryatara. So, for example, in Tibet, where the Mahayana is practiced, but in specifically, there are 4 different schools or 4 different sects, that of the Nipa, Kagyu, Gelo, and Sakya practices. And all 4 schools or sects actually practice these 3 of Aryatara, Chidresik or Avalokiteshvara, and Manjushri. Whereas some of the schools, some of them practice various other meditational deities, such as Gusavaja or Hayagriva, but all 4 schools or sects are the ones that practice these 3 in the same way. And they rely on these 3, Aryatara, Chidresik, and Manjushri, in the same way. So, and they also practice these 3 as inseparable practices. That's all.
네, 대과 침부 참상기로 대과 침부기 아니 추 켈랭의 용수 조박이 지준 좀 추고디 냠네 치기어레스 가이선 델이야 냠네 치온디게 베나 예담 산딘 지금 로진바나 왕다 투수 마슈니 냠네 치바나 아니 네바 용기어라스 다 지준 좀 추고딜이야 수 냠네 치바나야 왕다 투수 메비토는 냠네 치바나고 야 겐체마도 아니 케베사마도 아니 냥가치가 메바인자 다 용수 조바 냠는 거 서레스로
So in terms of all Mahayana practitioners, the Dharma that they practice in terms of the Mahayana practitioners, they all rely and they all supplicate Aryatara in this way. Whereas if one is practicing and wants to rely on those other meditational deities, such as Yamantaka, Vajrapati, and so on, if one does not firstly receive that initiation, then they actually would incur a fault. But that is not the case when practicing and supplicating great Master Aryatara.
어디래다 딘디기 다 최고의 계란속 담내로 소스다 뒤즈되는 냠는 시야디 아니 싸우니는 노려 말레스 베마시바다 야부레스라 야부레스.
So the practicing now in this way that you are by relying and supplicating on Aryatara. So if the one has not received the initiation necessarily, then this is not mistaken. Yeah. So this is indeed receiving great benefits, very useful.
Any 락dun도 아니 주준 드라마디 하장 그 틀린 유르바치. 로 베난 파바제르지 틀린 유르보 주준 잠비야는 틀린 유르보에는 주준 드라마디 믹스가 틀린 유르바치. 간 수수 원에 있지. 아니 주준 드면 생각나서 산 타치도 쏘았다 봐야나. 근데 지금 람상 편도 용돼 했든지. 아니 틀린 유르바치라야 Sigures.
So in particular, when one supplicates and relies on Aryatara, she is especially known for the attribute of fulfilling activities swiftly. So this is her special attribute. Chedrasic or Avalokiteshvara Medjusri, yes, they do fulfill the enlightened activities if one relies on them. But Aryatara is especially her attribute is to complete or accomplish those activities swiftly. So when one is reciting the name mantra of Aryatara, for example, immediately one is able to experience benefits by doing that. So it is said that Aryatara is very swift in accomplishing those enlightened activities. That's
Tadi kharis lawondi chidang ani ta sangi tukge munam gutoni yungu yoras sangi tukge wondi ani chi nganzu dromi pi tebe nanglola ya call letter tarema tudara yinji seni ro kanji jitsun drama de ani simjen nam covid dungale ani draw chingki ani mixege ani halaya ani tukje shabachi o dinji chage orwas tinza ani jitsun drama ya sota wondi ani mixege chilling yo yimbati ani sanji tukje dang tone yungyosares sanji tumen nang ton ro
갑자기 네 상계 춤든데 이 거기를 배 라우
샤초라
라스. So why is that? Yeah. So it's really based on the aspirational prayers of the Buddha Shakyamuni himself. Yeah. So here, based on the aspirational prayers of the Buddha, Aryatara is being known for the liberator or the freer of sentient beings from the suffering of cyclic existence. Yeah. So she is the special capacity to free beings or liberate beings from the dissatisfaction and suffering of cyclic existence. Yeah. So then when one supplicates and relies on Aryatara, then this is due to the aspirational prayer from the heart of the Buddha Shakibhuti. Asula.
다 간지 딘자 다 지존드미 추고르디 칸다스 냠len 치고 그레스 라운디 냠len 칸다스 치고 그레스 라와나 지존드마레야 소아타바 치고 마이 바로 nga 동할레 트바쇼 니 데든 탐진 트바쇼 세기 남만음 대자 마이 바 랑아 키와 치말레야 덴로 키와쇼 세라 소바타 안지 수수랑기 치도 만남 게다 마이 바 아니 심전 탐질라 미비 아니 세와 닌지 첨보다 아니 즉 동번이 또비 셔럽라 소바단 제비토니 그러 간지 샴페인 sambadan 제비토니 아니 셴든 주 소미토니 아니 지준 드말이야 아니 소타바나 다 지준 드미 추고 추디 오니기 지준 드미 추 차거래서 마도 소수 미제들이 기부 용야다 즉 소수 단디부 용야 딘디 말람담난 디더 디거다이냐 피기 지준 드라마 상기기 툭게단다 지준 드라마 근데 지준 드라미 온라야 샤미 있다 고버 균선 줘라스 디더 니본디 퉁구요 말레스 간선의 지준 드라미 추고디 대버침부 디나니 아니 상아 도지 디비 추고지 완자 상아 도지 디비 추기 냠랭기 쪼디 닌지당 잔주구쌤 또머니 또비 셔럽디 차고레스
So how are we to practice and rely on Aryatara? So it's not just in terms of supplicating or requesting Aryatara that I be free from suffering and meet with happiness, or not even may I be free from suffering in the next life, or may I meet with happiness in the next life. But it's in conjunction with the thought of others. So with the thought of all sentient beings. Yeah? So we rely and practice on with Aryatara in order to cultivate this mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta, and the mind that realizes emptiness. And ultimately, that both of these minds of compassion and wisdom are conjoined and practiced together. So it's also on this thought of practicing in terms of not only oneself, but in terms of others' happiness as well. So this is what would constitute as an actual practice, and when relying on the rituals of Aryatara. So yes, it's okay to pray that may in this life, may I be happy, may I be free from suffering. But there was a reason, a purpose behind Aryatara and her the thought that was that the Buddha was motivated by. Yeah? So the very heart essence of what Aryatara is, if one is only motivated by one's own self-interest, then this is not in accord with the very nature of Aryatara. Yeah? So, and specifically, if we're practicing in terms of the sacred mantra or tantra, then the main emphasis and the very nature of practicing tantra is to be conjoined with the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, and the wisdom that is realizing emptiness. Azula.
nganzo nganzo ya nganzin di shukchimbu jiyo wanza ane mulam jikana ya nga kibu yongya sho samyagi mulam di lepa short roya do chigoras susu ki chedo mulam ji magye baina ane chi kyong ra roya ki sornang soro legyoras di nganzo gi da kharso da nganzin shukchibi wang leba ma to ngone ki 심전 탐지기도 물론 개바이나 아니 소수 기부 용야디 태점 용거서 말했어 태점이어서 말했어 Simjan 탐지기 제도 삼로지 땅도 봐나 소소 아니 디든 냠도 디 슈얼리야 아니 소소 아니 기부 차도 거레스 배나 차자와나 랑기 체도 소소 찍고 비게 아니 제데다 소소 찍고 아니 직 존나 삼비 로드 기온디 로 텔레템비 아니 직 너차 셰당 차도라 소바 용체니 소소 마기바 차도 아상 삼아 만주 가주시게 샹라 미비 pen 닌지의 장발로 소바 곰투바나 아니 인기 미유 샹라 미니 곰고 여르데냐 무스 아니 기부디 소소 기부 차도 아서로 소소로 되고 바페고 안 소소 기부 차도 아서 딜리즈레스로 된자 만주 만놈 가리 잡아야냐 셴기 체도 샘띵니 셴기 체도 잡아야나 아니 소수 된다디 디 슈얼리야 드브조거레스
So yes, we have self-grasping. Yes, we have this present. And naturally, when we do make prayers and aspirations, we'll always consider ourselves and we can pray for ourselves, yeah. And we think maybe if we don't pray for ourselves explicitly, then we might actually get a loss, we'll miss out on something. But if you consider not only considering only yourself, but if we extend that out to all sentient beings, there's really no doubt, there's no need to doubt that you will experience happiness by extending those prayers and aspirations out to all other sentient beings. Because, for example, when we only really think of ourselves, and then relying on the thought of ourselves only, when we experience minds of desire, anger, competitiveness, and so forth, we only experience unhappiness and mental disturbance. Yeah. So whereas when we reflect and meditate on minds such as compassion and loving kindness and so on, then we ourselves directly feel and experience a sense of happiness, a sense of peace and relaxation. So regardless of whatever aspirational prayer or prayer in general that you're making, if we extend that to include all other beings, then really implicitly our own purpose will be fulfilled as well.
다들이 된자 다 지도점이 추구를 냠슬렘발이야 아니 셔럽당 닌지 주임바디 아니 간르스 토니 섬르당고 그레스 라바이나 안주 지도점이 생아 여러와스 지도점이 생아 코랑 토니 섬르스 담바이나 아니 셔럽당 닌지디 개치슈 차고레스
So in order to engage in the practice of Aryatara, so how is the main practice of wisdom and compassion coming about? Yeah. So this is via reciting the name mantra of Aryatara, and it becomes very important in this context. That's it.
Pena 지존주미 생아 되온디 옴 따레 또따레 또리 소아세지 이기 주슬라버다 이기 주 간지디 디나오기 따조 지존주미 생데 카레스레디 아니 다 지당전나 따라세디 지존주미기 생리스 디 민기 남단 셴발야 또다리 또레셋 디숨디 자위기 지존주미 생기 남다레스 이네야단 생기 쪼드 따라셋 드라마슬라라 드라마 디 페게레 디 렉저리 케네 추 규르사디 따라셋레스 jizundrimin senres, right?
So, for example, when reciting Tara's day mantra, it's Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha. It's about 10 syllables or so. So, in general, Tara's name is Tara. So Arya Tara's name is Tara, and the other syllables make up a more descriptive amount of Arya Tara's name. So the word Tara is a Sanskrit word, and Drolma is the Tibetan word. Azula.
Sandra, Kasa Kirangi 10 syllable.
10 syllable. syllable. 이게 kanshi 하고
이게
tanka kyame.
생sam도 말아와. 난다 다리 또 다리 또리 소아슬라니 어디다 간지들이 다 니기 아니 드라마 세디 따라 세디 다 비기 제자지 온디 따레 세디 제자자리고라스 다 door 세디 갈라 버스나 심젠 넘 코알리 door 심젠 넘 코비 둥할레 아니 돌와 징게들이야 dormas 마자야디 아니 비기 지즈드미기 아니 가서다 넘버디 아니 지 meg number chin peyo banza ani majar vares ta dor ani khowal dor gi yobana ta gari toni tab gari toni jizun drame samjen nam khowal dor wa chigres labanas tab gari toni jizun drame samjen nam khowal dor wa chigres labaina go delaya om singidi sherb dengyores ani tutarese digi ani zewa ninji chembu tengores digi zewa dingi toni ani nyurt ani tutarese di nyurwa la kogres dingi toni simjennam kowale nyurt drowa chigres laya di ta jizundrimin 생각이 된다 쪼디 차고res.
So not quite sure exactly the number of syllables. As the translator, I said 10, but to speak directly to the meaning of those syllables. So dror in Tibetan is translated as the word liberate, to free from. So the meaning of dror or to liberate is to free or liberate beings from the suffering of cyclic existence. So she is the ma in Tibetan is giving the connoting the female aspect of the word. So so since Aryatara is liberating beings from the suffering of cyclic existence or samsara, then what is the method that she is relying on in order to free or liberate those beings? And that is what the Om syllable is representing. And that represents the wisdom, the wisdom that realizes the true nature of reality. And then Tutare, the following syllables, represents the loving kindness aspect, the compassionate aspect. And finally, the following syllables after that is representing the swiftness or the quick, agile ability of Tara. So this is the main meaning behind this mantra, the name mantra of Arya Tara. That's the last.
다디 개체주를 다스라 다디 개체주를 다 인자 아니 옴 생이 디칼이야 셔럽드 템바치 아니 또다리 따레세 디칼이야 주주 드라마세 아니 또다리 칼이야 세원인지 쳔보티 공기 셔럽당 세원인지 쳔보라 때네 주주 드미 심젠남 아니 코알리 뉴르트 드로바 치간자 또다리세 아니 소하세다 아니 아 태섬 써니니 요 말이스 저 태섬 써니니 요 말. 도바 써니니 요 말. 도르리스 테네 코나 고쇼그레스 그러 저 가르기압기압도 차기도 티레스 딘자 더 주준 드미 탑 아니 셔럽당 아니 세번인지 쳔보 탑시니 손든 제발라 때니 심젠놈 코알리 드로바 치그레스 뉴르든 코알리 드로바 치그레스 라온디 아니 다츠디 제저 드미 심젠놈 코알리 드로바 치비 탑디 아니 셔럽단 인지 차기도 하스로 생각이 된다 디레스 다가랑 레스 딘자 아니 제저 드미 텔레 주고나 아니 셔럽단 인지 고미야드레스 로 셔럽단 인지 손든 제바이나 제저 드미 텔레 여여바레스로 탑시 니 고마도나 아니 나기부 용하쇼 나데부 용하쇼 니 총람로 용하니 지 티니로지 상담 대바이나 아니 자위기도 지존 드라마타고 아니 텔레글하리 아니 텔레지 죽을 되겠느냐 아니 가서 다 지금 제보도 마소는 춘중 차가도 왔으러 춘중 그거 춘중 차도 그랬어
So this is very important to understand. So the syllable represents wisdom, and the tutare represents tara or droba in Tibetan. And then the following syllables represent the loving kindness and compassion. Yeah. And then relying on these two, the wisdom and compassion, then Tara is able to swiftly liberate beings from the suffering of cyclic existence. So we really don't need to have any doubt about Aryatara's ability, because she's relying upon these two, the method of compassion and wisdom. Yeah. So, and on this basis, she's able to swiftly remove and free beings from suffering of cyclic existence. So, but when we are practicing and supplicating Aryatara, we also need to cultivate an understanding of wisdom and compassion, or method and wisdom, in order to, when we are supplicating her, in order for her to quickly fulfill those enlightened activities. So without these two, the method and wisdom, even though we may rely upon Aryatara and supplicate her, but those activities will only result in a very small outcome, a very small purpose. Lazula.
아들이 지단이 탑던 셔럽니 송제치는 냠내치 마투나 학동도 단인지 첨보세 심전 탐제 동안다 전에 찌마로 냠비 아니 심전 탐제 동안다 전에 찌마로 냠비게 somebody 메나 아니 추 간다 지기 바이냐 대버침 비추는 로고 말했어 학동도 상가 도지디 비추는 로고요 말했어 딘상아 주주 주미 추고디 아니 대버침 비추 나니 상가도 도지디 비추 콩라야 여반자 네버도 아니 주주 주미기 냠내치 온디 아니 콜롱 인지기 생거야디 신도는 계시모레스 로 계시모레스
So in general, if we are practicing or following in the Mahayana vehicle, then there must be this union of method and wisdom. Yeah. So even if we generate a thought that we cannot bear or is really unsuitable, that any sentient being suffers in any way. But if our thought is not infused with this method and wisdom, that practice or that prayer is not going to be constituting a Mahayana practice. Yeah. Because Aryatara, her practices are the source of those practices are rooted in the Mahayana vehicle or the great vehicle, then it must be infused with this motivation that conjoins method and wisdom together. So this is very important. Let's
Teni ta pi sanga ku chugla ani kanda jin pa ya thoma delaya tomba nyut kyur manzu ra ani sadana kanda jin dyong yo ba ya go delaya tomba nyut kyur tombi ngale se sigdi yo bares tonyi gi tawi gi chokchi mena yang sanga chulan rugo mares tinza tsenga kanda jin ba ya ra nganzu tsenga slaundi ani nga gi chukor den devi toni ani tsengi tendalaya samdaya dredos tsenga kanda jin ba ya thogma delaya om seg tsikti yoyo bares om seg tsikti.
So in terms of the Tantra or the secret mantra vehicle, in the beginning of all sadhana practices, there is this dissolution into emptiness and then arising from emptiness. So this is in accord with all the sadhanas or practice texts, then it's necessarily going to be having this factor. Yeah. So if one is not practicing with the assistance of this wisdom mind, then it's really not becoming a tantric practice. And that especially relates to any mantra, specifically any name mantra, that if it is related to tantra, then it necessarily has to be assisted by this wisdom mind. So this is what the Om syllable at the start of all mantras is representing. Masula.
그래다 생각 되온디 된다 성당고 그러스라 된다 성마다는 직진 된데 봐나 아니 샘라 배 카버스 된다 성당디 옴 세디 깔려야 다 가르 성당고래세디 옴 세디 깔려야 가르 성당고래세디 동번이 성당에 들어스 동번이 성당디 동번이 또비 셔럽딜이야 냠린 조그러스라 셔럽디 또 동번이 또비 셔럽들이스 다 동번이 또비 셔럽 냠스내서 가서나 율 동번이 되나야 성당서 들이스 다 동번이 되나야 지진 주민 생각이 가리깔래야 동번이 시월슬라바나 고기 옴세디기 찌디기 동번이 땡고여레스 디깔래야 동번이 공고거레스 라 생각 되미깔래 저는 동번이 공은 통 동번이 공고 옴 시비 찌디 소수 카니마 라바다 아니 디다 냠도 샘나로라야 아니 동번이 내수지 젠투가지 제고거레스.
So when we recite the name mantra, yeah, we must reflect on the meaning of that mantra. Because if we do not reflect on the meaning behind that particular mantra, then you could say that it's quite difficult to derive any benefit from it. Yeah. So here we've got the syllable Om, yeah, and that represents wisdom, in particular the emptiness. Yeah. So mainly the wisdom that is directly realizing the and emptiness. So when we rely on the practice of Aryatara, this is the and when we recite this syllable so this is a reminder of the empty nature of objects. Yeah. So when we rely on the practice of Tara, when we recite the we bring to mind or we recall the empty nature. Yeah. So we reflect on and we consider about the empty nature of things. So together as we recite, we also think about this meaning and we recall emptiness. Lazula.
Jidani said yigisum yungores, yindusum, a o masek, yindusum yungores. Tinangi yi tatsu a said he pigitachi jay tanda japugin the town dinero, and it tanda be chimachi kotung jimbaina a singing tea sigla deni, tombani kogiores, a singing sig tombani tembares, tombani tingres son yores, ra. Nanzu tombani tembi son ya mambu yungura, pena sherving butavate, tombani tembi sigre. Ge tombaslavna, sorry, Sholoka, Tonda Ge Yongi, and Dian Tomani Tembi Sigre. Boom Gendry Dusam Slavna, Dian Tomani Tembi Sigre. That is so duina. Said Sik Korangi, Iki Korangia, Tomani Tengres, or Dinison Yores, or Dinison Yores.
So in general, the syllable is actually made up of three individual syllables. It's a, ma. The a, ma. The barula and the repeat. Barula,
O, ma.
A,
O, ma.
Ma, a, o. So not So a, o, ma. So this is what the three syllables that make up the single syllable. So the first of those three syllables is a, yeah, and this represents emptiness itself, yeah. So in general, there are many different types of texts or words that show or represent emptiness, yeah, as a concept in its entirety. So, for example, emptiness is shown by the Heart Sutra, or the emptiness in the 8,000 lines, or the 100,000 lines. But when we condense it down to a single syllable, then this is what a represents. It represents emptiness, it is said. Lasula.
That Dikalaya, that Tombani Kandaj Gomgors, Tombani Sadi, and it's Sudi, and Gomsagi Shidi, and Susug Dinlaya, Susu Tolaya Gomgores. That Digomon Digi, Pig, o, ma, sumgi, yigisum digi, and lu nga yigsum gi, Sunderes. Lu nga yigsum la teni, and nga sadi. Ligoras, Rangi Lu nga yigsum la teni nga sa zamado, Lu nga yigsum ni Rangi Lu nga yigsum pa shani, and nga singing yoresna, Sawin Yomaras. Things nga di Lu nga yigsum la teni trubaji remado, Mademba Rangi trubaji, Sawin Yomar sadi, Shaundi, Tomani turned Teres, Tomba said the Rangi Tomba. Tian Rani. Nanzu semnala ya chik ane ngau nyawandi su khana ya madeba pigi rawang du yobata chik chergoras chawa nanshin chik yomardas kaisna lu nga yigsum la tenne pa tagsam remato tipa shani yudini kerang nga se chik yomaris lawandi ane nga rawang tribi tongbati di ro that lunga yiksum gu chönden ro da a o masum di lunga yiksum chönden la sha and ti le teni ani ngas ta ba insa nga de rang troba me ba di that o tombani ko teres tinza om shibi sig de me kabdula ya samlo di tang go gores ra sam di tang ba na da tombani to be shirab gom ro gores ra.
So how are we to reflect and meditate on emptiness here? So we take as a foundation of our reflection on emptiness, sorry, we take ourselves as a basis for our reflection on emptiness. So in terms of the three syllables, the a or ma, they represent our body, speech, and mind. Yeah. So then we use these three, we take our own body, speech, and mind, and we putting those three aside and we look for an inherent self, an inherent I. Yeah. So aside from these three, we search for this inherent I, and not finding that inherent self or I, then this is the meaning of emptiness. Yeah. So empty of what? Empty of an independent self. Yeah. So it is not, the self is not appearing and is not existing in the way that it appears to us, but it is actually something that is only established in relation to our three of body, speech, and mind, but it's not in and of itself an independent entity. So this is what we understand as empty of an independent or inherent self. And this is what the three syllables of ha or ma represent. Yeah. So when we recall the mantra Om, and when we recite that, the syllable Om, then we need to reflect about this meaning, and it becomes a reflection of the wisdom that realizes emptiness. That's all.
That's nibadi and it tarisate dormas dorwa chigres. That dorwa chigres ra. Ani sigan tambo omgi tombani tobi sherabti. The che nibad dorwa che. The sumba dige to darese dige and it's 7 inch chemboti. Ra 7 inch chembot. Kansan 7 inch chembos in the Kandajiris laundi. The piggy Decha shedan temula sobige, any nyumbi wangi, any chick, any anzu kewa, neva, chiwalaya, ramamebati, sueshagojaras. Tig dunga dilit and the chimaru nyambigi, lodelaya, ra kanji, the chicken tabu inaya, any dujig dunga lit and the chimaro, dujig dunga said. When the cabin dujig dungalit, Tanaji maro, Tensusu my Samaimba, Samjan Tamji, any cabin dujig dungar devigi, any socha kandaji of Inaya, Titamji, any dunga dilit and the Chimaru Yambigi, Sevadi, 7 inches segores. That didn't sound the Deondi, Dungar Yonsag Zawadi, Numutu Somre, Numutu Song Zawadi, and it Temu Mari Badre. Mari Nimbudi and it Tombani Tobi, Sheriff Teres, Nilu Tombani Tobi, Sheriff Teres. That he Simjanon Koli Kamzu, the Signe, did the Tana Chimaru, Nyambi, Lord Leondi, and Sheriff did that. Son the Deondi, the Piggy Simjanam, Dunga Dili Toralaya, and it project Tabshinjimalova, the day and the Lela Chagoras. Or Dinti Chanada, and you're the dog Islam, it's a company Turisati, new the draw chigris. dindri someone done the Jizundrim Sanga Saki sound did down why not? And Jizundrimi and Tilin Julia Tesum Kilio Maris, Dobachi Maris.
So the second syllables, the tare, so they in Tibetan represent droba. So in Sanskrit it's tara, yeah. So the first syllable it represents the wisdom that is directly realizing emptiness, and then the third or the subsequent syllables, they represent loving kindness and compassion, great compassion. Yeah. So based on one's attachments, desire, anger, and so forth, those afflictive emotions. So due to these afflictive emotions, then we're under the influence or the control of the birth, death, aging, sickness, and so on. So then one is able to, or in this case, Aritara is able to liberate being from suffering. In particular, the third type of suffering, that of the all-pervasive sufferings. Yeah, so one sees, based on the understanding of wisdom and great compassion, when one sees sentient beings, they really generate a feeling that it's inappropriate that sentient beings suffer, in particular, suffer from this all-pervasive suffering. Yeah. So when these two, the wisdom and great compassion, are conjoined, by relying on that wisdom that realizes emptiness, then it is remedying the confusion that beings are under the control of, that confusion or ignorance. So then on that basis, Tara is able to guide beings and liberate beings from this suffering and continuously circulating in this cycle of samsara or cyclic existence. Yeah. So, and on that basis, Aryatara is able to easily benefit others and swiftly benefit others in terms of liberating them from suffering. So you can really feel very convinced, and there's no room for any doubt that Aryatara is able to benefit beings in this way. That's all.
The Sherabdang Ninji Sondre, Sondre, Ben Ninji di and Trolaya, Sherab Yobatan, Sherab Trolaya, Ninji Yobana, and Midi Kaswata, Logo the Mason, Chimuchagwas. Kansan Sherab Tobgi, Dungar Narsud.
La 얘기 좀 참아라.
La.
근데 아니 나중에 야보적인 힌트.
야, 개말. 지자 아니 셰럽다 닌지니 송드제니 냠네 체투바나 아니 메델야 로고 레기어레스 로고 레기어레스 간스나 셰럽기 톱기 둥하르 기나르츠티 둥하르디 칸라데니 중구 요메기 베 콩다 제바디 통구여와스 텔레테니 동하다잖아 치마로 냠비 로딜레온디 아니 메델야 로고 레기어레스 마동 안즈 베는 찌당기 냠타비기 심젠디린 통바이나 아니 신나서원 통바이나 디 아니 동하르기 짜와디 하마고디 아니 간졸레야 ngam라기야 아니 신나기 ngam라기 아니 직타기 아니 소소소소 베나 아니 빠심 드레딘디 아니 샘심 드레딘디 용구여라스라 아니 디 간스나 이 동하르 나르츠디 동하르 칸라데니 종니 동하드 칼데니 종구 예메다 간르스 나르기 예메디 네수 하마고니 갑수가 비길야지 아니 동아 타고 빼나 나사슈 타고 땅데라 소보다 지기직세 두고요 소보 통디 아니 거기 통데 디마도 디 갸브종 내주도 하마고디 아니 직자게 아마도 아니 셈라야 셈슝 파리아디 용구여서 말레스
So when wisdom that realizes emptiness is conjoined with great compassion, then they actually serve to assist each other mutually. Yeah. So when one is practicing with this two in conjunction, then on that basis, one is able to develop great courage. Yeah. So from the side of wisdom, through the power of wisdom, one is able to see the source or the cause of the suffering in another being. Yeah. So whereas if we don't have this clarity, this wisdom, we may see a scary situation, a very severe emergency situation, but we may not know the root of that suffering, of that situation. And on that basis, we would develop a feeling, a sense of fear, worry, and ultimately a sense of discouragement. Yeah. But because we're not knowing or understanding the methods to remove that suffering, so when we see or people with severe diseases or they're harming each other, then since we don't have that wisdom that understands the source of that suffering, then it's most likely that the feeling of scared and anxiety and fear are only going to be coming. That's all.
자, 비나 동한테 타는 지모로 저 인지기 갭된려야 셔럽 여봐야나 동아 딜리 트러비기 탑이 여봤디 동아 딜리 트러지기 탑이 여봤디 통투고 여래스 동아 딜리 트러지기 탑이 여반 통바이나 미디 카드나 셈슈 차게 여 말이스 로 먼저 탑 매바다 제제 매바지 로지 통온디 아니 셈슈 차게 여라서 동아 가주스 여봐이냐 동아 딜리 트러비기 탑 매바지 싸우니 여 말이스 로 셔럽 여봐이나 동아 트러비기 탑 통용거리 동아 트러비기 탑 통와이나 동아 그날수 간다지 통바이나야 셈라 shum바기 말이스 직자기 말이스 간선 콜레 트러비기 탑 통와인자 콜레 탑시 여봐지 통바인자 로 빼는 쪽이 근데 저거 숙심부지 또 봐이나 다 칼라 라야기 탑시 여말 상바이나 아니 셈랑 암라기 그러와서 다 저거 또 봐이나야 칼라 라야기 비 고급다 탑시 통바이나 암라기 말아 또 칼라 라야기 상비 아 셈나라 로드브지 레기러와서 어 디난신 로진사레스
So when one has this wish of great compassion, it feels that it's really not suitable for any sentient being to experience suffering. When that thought is assisted by wisdom, then one is able to see a method that is going to be able to remove the suffering of that sentient being. And then on that basis, one is able to develop that sense of courageousness. But without this feeling or this seeing a method to remove that suffering, then one is is left with feelings of fear, anxiety, worry, and so forth. But if one is able to see or understand a method in order to remove those sufferings, then regardless of whatever type of suffering or that one sees or experiences, then one will not be feeling discouraged. So it's like, for example, when one is feeling hungry, if one does not see a method to obtain food later, at a later time, then one will be feeling very worried and anxious about this. But if one knows that even though they are hungry, but they're able to bear their hunger because they know that later on that they will be able to get food and eat. So it's most likely similar to this.
제베나 캄바지는 줄 권자 잡아이나 권자 잡아이나 다디 체약 탑시 싸우니 요사 말삼나 랑사샘랑 감다 끼그레스 다디 체약 탑시 요 소소 드니마 텐토야 탑시 통바이나 샘랑 감다 끼그 말스 들어 찍바라다 끼그 말스 딘자 아 nganzu sherab namju sherab mandana ani dungargin narawandi teni ngamra khoran kiechene ngamra di dungal lawa pigi ngamra gi sem ngamra gi thone ani nganzu ta ani shidwel so chigyoras ro pigi nacha di gi ani shia gi nacha ji meba ina ya tidan nyamdu sem ngamra kiechene ani 시드랑에 mambu yungu yoras 가서 나사 딜리 트로에 탑시 싸우는 문도 싸운디 아니 드님 네버든 요요 시드로가 왔어 아 나사 딜리 트로에 탑시 지요를 싸바나 레와지 통온디 나사 디 숙첨부 나바이네 네버드 시기요 말아왔어 딘디 케바 뺀 로그 요레스라
So another example is that when we enter the house, that we know that there is if there isn't any way to lock that house, then on that basis, we develop a feeling of fear and insecurity. Whereas if we know that there is a way or a method to lock one's house or room, then we have a sense of security and feeling okay. So it's also the same in terms of our feelings of suffering. If we don't know a way to relieve ourselves from that suffering, then that sense of fear comes. Or maybe we might not feel like we have a disease or we have some overt suffering, but we have this fear of death, a fear of, and because we don't understand a method to avoid that, then we have this feeling of fear and anxiety. So, for example, as well, is that when there is a patient, when they know that there is a method to avoid dying from their disease, then they feel that sense of hope. Whereas if the patient gives up easily and knows that there is no method to avoid death, then that sense actually assists and death comes a lot faster. So you can see that way of thinking, the knowing if there's a method or not, makes a really big difference. That's it.
These are Kechishudi Sherabdan Ninji Yabush Koyat, Susugula, Big Chunamki, Nilu Tomani Tobe, Sherab Yabush, Rangi Tendriana, and Shenla Pendochivana, Sherab di Shinduni Kichimburas, Sherab the Nyamdura, Sherab the Nyamdu, Ninji Sambatia, Sevi Sambatia, Hajang Kichimbures. Sewa mena ani sherab di the shendun chiala shindun kale kabores shendun sherab ro pena zambali nanglo la yora tape namju hajang namju chembo pena ro ani duten chanja sodeng dozo ani namju shu yora ro duten chanja sueni ani lomba tipe kamachik segen kashinole tortuga duten chanja songen zolaya sherab Sherab yoros, in a conzu sam noloya, any ninji medi zambala, ninji mandandi, any shenlaya, nutsi kazus chet tuyakpe, any bezun chiamado, jig shenla nugri, that the ching mar samsongi, samlo di ketugomodas, Timoteo Carazana, ninji mandamanza, sevisem mandamanza, tiungu yorasra, Tinzang Anzolaya, never do, any 아니 셔럽당 세비 셈 니가 냠도 용고 그래서 니가 수수줄에 끼고 그래서 다 디케야기 쳐도 아니 게워드스 속삭스는다 디치고 그래서 속삭 드장 야고 제바나 아니 셔럽당 인지 아니 오늘 단에 풀도 좀 봐지 아니 랑귤에 끼고 그래서 다 디쳐도 베나 곤졸아야 초보피야로 소바당 아니 지 kusuntude shangala sobata ani chignyam tabi simjen ombonlaya jimbatanyala sobata o dinti chenwana ani kewasa gores tel dene ani sherabdan sevi sambati ani lakbordin pegores ani tel dene randa shen tamji gi tönju tugedi ani tel dene yungu yores o dinti sungudo asra da chuyonanola.
So if we understand what is most important is the wisdom that is realizing directly the true nature of reality and the great compassion, then from the side of the wisdom that realizes emptiness, so we are able to fulfill the purposes of oneself and for others. And if that is also conjoined with the great compassion and love, then this is a very holistic approach. Whereas if we have love without wisdom, then this is something that is unfulfilled, or incomplete. And conversely, if one has wisdom or great intelligence, let's say, in this world, there are many people that have great intelligence. They've even created the atomic weapons that are able to destroy a large area in just mere seconds. So this is something that is very sort of clever, I guess you could say. So, but it's because this cleverness or this wisdom is not conjoined with love and compassion. It is really only causing harm. This cleverness is only resulting in harm. And they're not able to cultivate a thought of compassion and love. So you see that both of these, the wisdom also needs to be cultivated alongside the love and compassion. And in order to generate those thoughts, those minds within your own mind, then we need to accumulate virtue and purify our negativities. And then on that basis, we're able to generate those good qualities. But in order to accumulate merit, for example, we make offerings, we make prostrations, we build representations of the enlightened body, speech, and mind, and so on. So then, on this basis of accumulating the positive virtue, then we're able to increase one's wisdom, realizing emptiness. And on the basis of accumulating and increasing our compassion, then we'll be able to fulfill the wishes of ourselves and others. So this would constitute the Dharma practice. La Sola.
So
our time is coming to an end. Is there any need for a question and answers?
So Geshe, with the practice of Tara, you were saying not necessary to have initiation, okay, but still to do practice of Tara.
Sadhana is different.
To visualize self as Tara, need initiation?
So, truptap de dende any range Drunke maimba ranke the geta any one gugirabe.
다기 돈이
다게.
나오다 왕국으로 왔어. 다기 돈이 아니 지순주미 냠니 제바나 왕국으로스. 다위기 지단기 지순주말이야. 아니 가서 다지 소왔다는 생각다는 소바 치원디 왕 마타브나야 지순주미 틀린 주게 디어레스. 어디송도 왔어.
So Geshe said that in order to self-generate or generate oneself as Aryatara in this case, then yes, it is correct that you do need a initiation. Whereas if one is merely reciting the mantra of Aryatara and supplicating her, then it is not necessary to get her initiation.
Okay.
Just another one is, so if you had highest yoga tantra initiation, but not Tara initiation, then you can visualize as Tara.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
심부터였나?
Is there any other questions?
Thank you. Earlier, Geshe said that the 4 schools or the 4 sects all practice Tara, Manjushri, and Chenrezig, and that they're inseparable. I was just wondering what you mean by that they're inseparable.
I think I said 3.
3. So the Chulukshi,
and Chuyunshi, Gelunima Saja Karsakayu.
Rishi,
And it's Samalogi and the Dramichu Yamni Chigwaris, Justin Drummond. So Tawa Chigwares, Yedam Tian Chigwares, Tilamare.
no. But her name Druma Chirizik Dan Jitsu Jabil Sum di Yawa Mepe and Yamlen de Yures.
Chigwares, Tisuk.
The Repe. The Yawa Mepe and Yawa Metang Canderes.
Konda Karsa?
The Jetson Juba Chirizik and the Jitsu Jabil Hang Sum Yawa Mepe Nyamlen Nyamsuling Yures. And Yawa Mepe Nyamsuru Cantere.
Pejinganchi or the Tandu Chugu Shigalogi, Samagi, Judun Jambian, Power Generesi, Judun Dreaming Yamland, Sami Chigwarella.
So maybe it was the translator's misunderstanding that Geshe didn't say that the 3 were practiced inseparably. So sorry for any confusion there.
Thank you. I might have heard it wrong. Thank you.
Me too.
My question is, or to please make me further understand this, what I heard is that this is not about your self-interest, but it is the Maharaja. Excuse me, I can't pronounce that word.
Mahayana?
Yes,
Mahayana.
Mahia, I think it's going to take me a little bit of time to practice.
That's right. You know what you mean.
Thank you. But that's, yes, so probably, well, my curiosity is about what is it that you mean about your self-interest, but it is the Mahia.
So your question is that when we're practicing from a Mahayana perspective, that what is the self-interest aspect? Is that right?
Well, probably on the one hand, I'm coming from a position of I'm taking a self-interest in learning Tara. And so I'm not quite sure how to express myself. So I would suspect what you've just asked me, I would say yes, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Hmm.
So 무기 the tepachebu
Yeah.
tepachebu기 kapla eri susurangi terdak tang shen ki terdat di kante yeo chegire 무기 letaboa hinsre ra any dikola any mahayara ki mane tepachebugi kapsu any the rang dan shen di yeo chitsu kanderes.
그래다 대부 챔비 깔려야 아니 더 탑시 만들어지기 전에 탑시 만들어지기 전에 대부 챔보다 대부 중세에 차버려 왔어. 저기 탑시 만들어지. 아니 간주기 된다 조디 아니 간주 기부 용야 들어왔어. 동안 매봐 대바 용야 들어왔어. 된다 소수 된다 들어왔어. 따라 메신디난 기타 아니 된다 조로디 기부 용야 제대로 왔어. 아니 동안 마용야 제대로 왔어. 다 기부 용야라야 동안 세고 거라. 인자 동안 세발야 동안 그 뉴무 생이디 세고 거레스. 뉴무 매바 치고 거레스. 다 뉴무 매바 치야라야 페나 아니 Döcha kungcho ngargil chagdok slawondi senas lawondi shenla ya tugudo ani döcha di shenla dini kigore chagdok di shenla mingni kigore ta duzu samalo shen pi ke chimbu tang shen tunga da chana chimaro nyamba shen tsa chimbu chin zintu bayna nyumu di ranjing sedro gores nyumu ranjing sebal dini susu tenda di shorlan druyung gores 어딜다 마도 셴바키요 말했어.
So we're speaking in terms of the Mahayara, or another word for it is the great vehicle or greater vehicle, yeah? So when we look at the two types of vehicle, we have the greater vehicle and the lower vehicle, or in Sanskrit, it is the Mahayara and the Hinayara, yeah? So these are differentiated in terms of their methods, yeah? So the practices that they employ. But in general, when we consider in terms of just ourselves, yeah. Ourselves, of course, we want to experience happiness and we want to be free from suffering, yeah. But in order to experience happiness, we must remove suffering. So in order to remove the causes of suffering specifically, so those causes such as our disturbing emotions, such as attachment, anger, hatred, and so on. But all of these disturbing emotions are actually dependent on others, yeah, usually in the context of others. So when we generate a mind that wants to be a benefit to others, that wishes happiness and wishes to remove suffering from others, then explicitly we are helping others, but implicitly or as a byproduct, our own purpose will be fulfilled. So this is in context of the Mahayana practices.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Final Lamrim dedication in a small booklet, page 14. From my two types of merits, vasa space, that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a grand length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives, Manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded paths of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path that I have discerned them. May I uphold the Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined. May I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be grounded boundless peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time. By even this graded path to enlightenment completed, due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtues practices, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. Thank you.